We are so glad to be here, everybody. Thank Dana for inviting us to do a workshop today. If for those new faces, we're the Learning Technologies and Instructional Design team. Our office is directly above this office, just right upstairs. If you ever need help with technology in your classrooms, and those classrooms can be either online or on ground, we help with the instructional side of it. You'll probably know your building support person a little more for the more technical side. My projector's broken, my computer needs new software, that kind of thing. But we're the people who help with teaching with technology. So we appreciate being here. Instructional technologist Thomas Fitzler, instructional designer Val Sevilla. I'm Diane, I'm the director. And then a couple of instructional designers we have that are remote, so you won't see them here today, but they're available by Zoom or email or however you would like to meet with them. We have Stacy Caceres, who is full-time, and Susan Thomas, who is part-time. So if you need to work with us on any follow-up from this workshop, we are available to you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to remind everyone that we have a poll area running so that if you have questions as we're going through, since we don't have time to necessarily pause for questions, submit them so you don't forget them, right? And we'll be bringing that up at the end and addressing those questions. And any questions that don't get answered today, you'll also have the contact information up there and know exactly how to reach out to us and get your questions answered. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is digital accessibility. What is it and why does it matter? Okay, our objectives for today, okay, participants will be able to reference digital accessibility guidelines such as WCAG 2.0, Section 508, and Universal Design for Learning. More about all of those in a bit. We'll create documents with digitally accessible images and tables. We've sort of found that to be one of the most common issues in documents. And add structural markup to improve navigation in documents. And finally, I also have this one here, okay? Advocate for digital accessibility in your departments and learning communities, because we want all of you to leave here prepared and eager, to encourage others, right? That's the main point of coming today, not just the lunch, which is, I know, amazing lunches, right? Okay, and here are some essential questions that I would like to focus on. What is digital accessibility? Why does digital accessibility matter? And how do I support my students in their learning? Okay, I do want to point out here that I understand that there are many ways in which you support your students, okay? It's about listening to them and being there to, being there and responding to them, okay? So that level of support is there, but here we're talking about where you're supporting them in their digital domains, okay? And that's why I like to specify digital accessibility. Accessibility could be a ramp outside, but digital accessibility is once we put things online, who has access to it? Who is going to open that document and struggle with it? Okay, that's what we're addressing here. So digital accessibility is when technology has been designed in a way so that it can be accessed by all users. People who interact with technology are extremely diverse. They have a wide variety of characteristics, and we cannot assume that they're all using a traditional monitor for output or a keyboard and a mouse for input, right? So why do we hear so much about digital accessibility now? Okay, well, if you recall, recent events forced a lot of institutions to unexpectedly have to go online. And as we did that, we left a large community behind. We left a lot of people behind, okay? And so at this point, ever since that happened, we're trying to catch up and say, look, we're ready for all of everyone, okay? So here are a couple of abbreviations because I'm gonna start with the legal responsibilities, but I really hope to get deeper than that today, okay? Section 508 is the federal law that specifically addresses digital content. It was originally established in 1973, and it's undergone some revision over the years as technology has changed the way we interact with the world, right? So it's a living document, okay? The WCAG, that's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, those were published to ascertain that all content placed online is accessible to all users. And all of this is enforced by the Office of Civil Rights. And I actually am going to turn to Diane to address this a little bit more about the OCR.
OCR is a sub-office of the Department of Education, and so they specifically look at these kinds of issues. And just like I used to talk about web accessibility back in the day, for those of you who are of my era here at Truman, you know that I used to talk about, yeah, those kinds of checkers are really out there. When Her Majesty the Queen wrote me a personal letter and said to take her stuff offline from a course, that we had posted some artwork from her private collection. It was a book, we didn't know it was hers, and so I think she had purchased it following the publication of the book. But there are really people out there checking that kind of thing. And so we do have to be ready and flexible to meet the needs as they come. And so the Office of Civil Rights actually has met on the Truman campus this year, just in the last few months, addressing our www site, so the public website. We did have findings and we did have to make changes. And so at that point, they were not looking at our courses, but they certainly left the impression that they could. So we do want to, not just to be in compliance, but to see what they're about. Why are they asking us to be compliant? And so I think that's the deeper level that Val is going to go into today. We additionally in Missouri, again, just like websites in Missouri have to be more compliant than other states. Same is true with digital accessibility for coursework. There are additional special laws in Missouri that are more strict than the rest of the country. And so that is what keeps us a little extra on our toes.
Yep. So lots of letters there, and I have another one that'll be very relevant to you if you have an online course. Okay, so if you have an online course, it's important to include a list of links to the accessibility pages of all of the technology that you use in the course. But don't worry, as I specify here, our office has put all of the VPATs, that's what they're called, the Vendor Accessibility and Privacy Statements, has put all of those into this website. Okay, so snap a picture of it or, get it from the recording later. But that website, all you have to do is if you have an online course, link to that page and you're covered. You've got all of the approved technology for Truman State University is addressed on that page. So, anyone else need to take that? I see some pictures still going. Anyone else?
We can email that to you, or we can link it to you on our website, so we can get that to you at any point.
Absolutely. Okay. So one more set of letters. This is the last one, I promise. Okay, and that's UDL. How many of you are already familiar with UDL? Okay. That's good, and this is, aside from the guidelines that indicate a legal responsibility, educators worldwide turn to Universal Design for Learning to make our lessons have a stronger impact. Okay, UDL is a framework published by CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology. This quote is taken directly from the CAST website I have here. Ultimately, the goal of UDL is to support learners to become expert learners who are each in their own way purposeful and motivated, resourceful and knowledgeable, and strategic and goal-driven. Okay, so this framework is just to make your lessons more effective. Okay, it's things to consider in your lessons. And I have a copy here of the UDL framework that we can pass out, and I made about 10 extra copies, so at the end, if you want to grab one for a friend to advocate for digital accessibility, be sure to bring that back. Okay, and while that's going out, I'm going to start talking about this chart that you're going to see, okay? The UDL framework is organized into 3 columns, okay? You see engagement, representation, and then action and expression. So you see those 3 columns. Simply worded, we want to provide learners with multiple means of accessing and engaging with the resources you provide, as well as multiple means for demonstrating what they have learned. Multiple means reaches every student where they are, okay? But don't worry, this does not mean that you have to create 10 versions of everything so that you can reach all 10, different needs or whatever that you have in your class, okay? Because if we make our content, and this is where I'm going to circle back to digital accessibility, if you are designing your content to be digitally accessible, then the tools are there for the students. And that's one of the things that I'm going to demonstrate to you today. If you make it accessible to them, then you are providing them with a multitude of tools that they have so that they can increase the means of engagement and production. Okay? So, I want to start with the third essential question that I had, how do we support students' learning, okay? Because I want this to be in the back of your mind as I address some of these topics, okay? Many resources are provided to students in the form of PDFs, right? So let's do a quick comparison. If we have a resource that's just scanned, a scanned page that's provided as a PDF, we have these advantages. It can be printed for class without issue. If you have this page that you print and you hand out to your students, and they keep that hard copy, you really don't have to worry so much about that copy as far as the digital accessibility. And what I did is I am a former professor myself, okay, and I taught Spanish, and I brought in here a 1-page front and back overview that I would provide my students that has all of the notes that they would need, the vocabulary, the grammar explanations, all of it on one front and back page, okay? This is an example of something that could be printed and handed to them and that they can use it. However, I also made a version before putting it online. I didn't want to put it online like this. I made a version that was more digitally accessible, okay? And so that version is the one that they would go online to perhaps hear it read aloud to them or other tools that we're going to be talking about, okay? That's why I say here that it might be more visually appealing and or, organized better for visual use. So I really want us to kind of categorize those two things, of something that is only visual. See? The digital version that I made has a lot of advantages. This one has one. It is a visual organizer, okay? However, a digitally accessible PDF can be accessed anywhere on any device, can be read aloud in most browsers. It's searchable. That's really important with some of your larger documents, okay? And so is navigate, easy to navigate, okay? It can be translated in most browsers. Text can be enlarged for easier reading, okay? Those of you my age or above, you might really understand why this is important. And for reading on smaller screens too, And it can be converted to HTML and read in dark mode or enlarged while keeping all of the text in the reading frame. And I'm going to demonstrate a couple of these, okay? So,
PDFs are one of the big common questions we get. That's a frustration point for a lot of people because, you have this great resource and maybe you scanned it, maybe you scanned it a couple of years ago. Maybe you don't have the original resource available anymore. Or it's just, it's not going to get accessible, maybe whatever you do, because it's a chemistry molecule. And so what are the kinds of things that we can do? We're going to talk about limits and legal versus usable versus reactive, what can we do there? But it is amazing what you can do using either the tools we have in Blackboard right now or the new LMS when it gets announced, and Ally will still be in the new one, so that's exciting. You'll not have to learn a new accessibility tool there. And so what you can do with these PDFs, which is, like I say, a really big sticker for people, with the techniques that Val can show you, they'll hopefully be less frustrating, because that is one of the really common questions we get.
So I want to take a look at some examples. See, this one is just a scanned page. Let's say you're on a device and you got to zoom in because the letters are this small, and then it starts looking like this, right? It's really just a picture. It's just a document with a picture of a page in it. And that's really not ideal for anyone, okay? But then here I have a file that is a digitally accessible PDF. So this is a digitally accessible PDF file. I'll pull this up here for us to see. And you'll notice that as I zoom in, see, the text kind of maintains that structure and you can still read it better, okay? However, because we have Ally in both Blackboard and it will be in the new LMS, then your PDFs, students are able to download those as HTML. And this is pretty amazing. So I'm going to show you this, how we can use the converted document in HTML to, it rearranges the text as you zoom in. See, you noticed as I zoomed in on the PDF, it only zoomed into one part. And so you're only able to read that and you have to scan, kind of scroll back and forth. It uses the browser's default viewing mode. So if you have it in dark mode, it'll be in dark mode. Okay, I'm a dark mode fan. And enables read aloud directly in the browser. Okay. You can hit Control-Shift-U. There are a few ways to get to that, and I'm going to demonstrate it today. Displays and reads aloud descriptions of the images. So if you've provided a text in your document, like you should for any images, then it'll describe it for them. Okay? It changes, you can change the reading speed, you can change the voice, you can even change the language. Okay, and so like I said, I'm going to demonstrate all of these for you right here. This is a document that I had. This is actually your chart. The chart that you're looking at, this is all of the content from the chart displayed as HTML. You notice that it's lost that visual appeal, right? It's lost that visual design. But look what we can do now with this one is, as I zoom in, see, it reshapes everything. So everything still fits the screen. No need to scroll back and forth while you're trying to read.
Know any students that use phones pretty extensively? Huge deal for that.
Notice that where you have these pictures of the brain, here we have a description provided about the picture that you're seeing, okay? Also, we can use read aloud. I have the icon here. There's a shortcut key for it. I could also just right click and say read aloud. This isn't any special software. This isn't an add-on or anything like that. This is just my browser of choice, which for me happens to be Edge, but I think most browsers have all of these same features now. Okay, so you can right click and say read aloud. Then I can change the voice options. See, I have it in a voice where it's reading with a Spanish accent, because sometimes I do view my documents in Spanish, and so if I have the language in Spanish, I want the pronunciation to be good. So, but let's hear Mark. So you can change the voice.
Illustration of a brain with the center of the brain highlighted to show the effectiveness.
I also tend to use this, because I'm just impatient. So I want someone to read to me really fast. Okay.
Networks. Provide options for recruiting interest.
So you see that you can adjust the sound, you can adjust the speed, and then as I mentioned earlier too, we can also translate it. So we can translate, and you just pick the language that you want to translate. Did I do that too fast? I want to make sure everyone saw. Now again, I'm using Edge here, but you can just look up the help in whatever your favorite browser is and find out how to do this. It's probably available. Okay, so
for those of you who teach foreign languages, this may not be your favorite bit of news. And so that you
I'm here for you.
you might want to meet with us again to see what some of your options are there. So this you can see would be a great tool though for a non-native speaker of English, where they can get the lesson in English, they are practicing their English speaking skills in class, but then to get that deeper learning, translating it to their native language could help deepen that learning to a great extent.
So, yep. And so now we have, it is translated into Chinese.
Optimize individual choice and autonomy.
Oh, wait, I think I need to change the voice option too. Well, it might take a little bit longer, and I'm not going to spend too much time, but you see that those options are there, that we can change the language to, you know, whatever their native language is. Students would be able to read your resources in their native language, okay? That's such an advantage to deepen understanding. Okay, so go ahead and close that up. And any questions about that so far, about the HTML? Because I feel like I went really fast through that. Yes?
So you showed us the PDF that looked like this, that was, that you were able to zoom in on. Was that just straight?
Ally converted it for me. And Ally can convert it for your students. And when we get the new LMS, Ally will be there to help you with the same thing. If it's digitally accessible, if you know, this document is digitally accessible. If it were not, then Ally would not be able to convert it quite so smoothly.
Are you going to talk about how to make our documents visually accessible?
Yes, we're going to address a few topics, not everything. There's way too much to cover in this period, but I will definitely make sure you leave here knowing where to find those resources, where to learn. And most importantly, you know, you're picking up the verbiage, you know, like knowing that you need alt text, you know what to search for to find out how to do it if you forget, right? Okay, so we're going to take just a moment to kind of discuss these two questions with everything that I just demonstrated to you. Okay? How many of you saw at least one way that a digitally accessible document would better support at least one of your students? Okay? And what barriers would be removed by making your resource digitally accessible? So I'm going to start a timer here, and we're going to spend 3 minutes to, you know, just talk with your neighbors about these. And don't forget that we have the Poll Everywhere open. The information is over on the sideboard if you didn't get it at the beginning, where you can submit questions. So as you're talking in your group, if questions come up, go ahead and submit them, and we'll be addressing those at the end. Big water.
This one too. Put up this one too.
It's already there. Thomas found beforehand that we could use the timer on there.
Do you have another slide to talk about what the rules are, what privileges are? We're going to say that, is that just something we address at the very end, or is there another stop point?
I didn't have what rules are you going to address? Maybe I do.
That 85%.
I think the best place for that is when I say, is that slide that I had about, does this mean we have to?
Yes.
Okay. And I actually have a spot in there.
Okay, so I actually want to jump in and take up space. Perfect.
And they were, it was clearly translated.
Share out as and ask to share out an example or two of what they're talking about.
Yeah, I put 5 minutes for the slide. 3 to discuss and then 2 to.
As I'm talking, I'm like, I can't hear anyone. Here it is.
I want to go over and listen, but I don't want to, you know, interrupt anything.
Do you mind if I open that conversation with an example myself?
Yeah, why don't you run the, you do that.
Are you sure?
Yes,
I do not.
just try to keep it 2 minutes because that's what I planned.
I'll put the timer up for Diane.
Just say you have to keep me honest on that. And just tell me when to start. Maybe another 30 seconds or so. Are we good? If we give about 30 seconds or so, should we be good?
I've got a timer.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
Disappointed that the read aloud I didn't have it set up right for the language so that it actually read in Chinese.
That's so cool, right? I mean, we could definitely see what's happening. All right. Do you want to be winding up like this? Okay, we'd like to hear some of just at least a couple of ideas that you guys came up with. I know for my son, one of the things that he really gets from the Ally alternative formats, we talked about browser different formats, but of course Ally within the LMS also has alternative formats that are even more variety than the browser offers. And so one of the things he likes is that Beeline reader, that where it changes the color as it reads the text, so you can stay focused on it. He doesn't have dyslexia, but he has something, and that just really helps him stay focused on those reading a big block of text. And so he really likes that. What did you guys come up with? What are some things that having that accessible document would help with? You want to share a couple of examples?
I have a couple of students at least for whom English is a second language.
Yeah.
So having it able to read to them either in English or their native language would be useful.
Okay.
And what do you teach?
Chemistry.
Chemistry. So, do we have world language teachers in here? Okay. Just let me know, and I have done that. I have gone through, trying to figure out how can I assess them if they can translate the page, right? So just talk to me if you have, questions about that. I have workarounds. I've done them.
We have several MA students in English who commute from Columbia. So I thought they had a research article that they could have read out loud to them while they commute. Right? It's almost like an audio book, but maybe a little less fun.
Right.
That could have
James Earl Jones is not reading it, but yeah.
But they could change the accent and make it more fun.
There you go. Thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you very much. So, I know this question is in the back of everyone's minds, right? Does this mean we have to redo everything we use in class? Okay, and not necessarily. All right, it's important to know these guidelines and follow them as you create new materials, of course. Knowing what to do from the start will help out a lot. And then as you're about to share something, take a glance over it, and check the things that I'm going to be going over today. Does it have alt text? Does my table have a header? So things like that, just check. And then when you put it into the LMS, whether you're using Blackboard or the new one, then you'll use Ally. Ally will let you know, and it will guide you through exactly how to fix it. So this is what you should keep in mind. And also just remember that it may seem like a lot at first, but it's just like anything. With practice, it gets a lot easier. It'll become second nature to do these things and just not even think about it. Okay, so it will get a lot easier as you form those habits. Okay? And also, Diane had something to add about the new LMS.
I mean, that's certainly not announcing.
And about our requirements,
Right, we have a classroom yet, I can't announce yet. But when a decision has been made, for those of you who are anxiously awaiting that, we hope to get an announcement out really quickly so that you guys can be learning about it and getting training. But rest assured that the new LMS does natively support building accessible text. If you're typing right directly into the LMS, it's going to definitely support that. It also supports Ally, and so you'll have some of those same tools. But you may be really worried about, that letter that came out from the provost in June. The goal is to start working towards spring, our spring semester, make some changes. Are you getting there? Are you working on stuff? For the 23-24 school year, we would like to be at target. What is target? What is target? That's always tough. Because of course the rule, right, the law, we've already talked about, there's 4 or 5 different agencies that have a law about this. And so of course the law is 100% of 100%. Everything is accessible. But obviously that's going to be tough to meet, right? We're human and we have lots of different topics and we have limited amounts of time. And so I liken it to things that we have to be ready to be somewhat flexible. We have to have a goal, but we also have to be somewhat flexible. So the law is that you drive the posted speed limit. Do all of you only drive the posted speed limit? So there are times when you make a decision, a calculated decision, to maybe vary from that. And so you have to be ready if you're going to vary from that legal standpoint. Are you ready to slow down when needed? Are you ready to pay a ticket if you need to? Or what dangers are you going to put other people in if you do vary from that? And so that's, it's maybe a bad analogy, but it's kind of the same thing. So you have to be ready in your class. If you haven't made everything accessible, or maybe you can't make everything accessible, then are you ready to talk to your students? Are you ready to maybe meet with somebody and read over an image or a slide or a document? Can you meet with that student and get that information to them in another way? Can you engage a student assistant? Do they have a student assistant? Is there something where you can meet? So the rule is, we can't say anything, but the rule is 100% compliant, right? That's the rule. But we do have a target. And so I've written it on the back wall. We are gonna go with the guidelines that Quality Matters uses, and that is that 85% of your materials are at least at an 85% accessibility mark. And so if you're feeling a little bit too wishy-washy in that gray area, that's your target. That's what you're trying to get to. The rule is 100%. But as you work through things, as you deal with all the materials that you have, realize that constant movement towards perfection is the goal. We just don't want you to not do anything, and we also don't want you to be so stressed about reaching 100% of 100% that you're paralyzed. So you have to do some of those calculations just the way you do with all of the legal issues in your life, and be ready to adjust if faced with an issue where what your decision was didn't quite work out. And so we do have to deal with the fact that OCR is watching us. We don't want to not be ready should they come knocking, but we also realize that we are all in this process together. So that is what we say. I'll with most legal issues where people say it depends, all that kind of stuff. It's very frustrating. I can't erase all your frustration, but we can help you get to where we need to be. 2 things that the university is trying to do, and that is making available support people like me and more. We have a team we can even call on to increase our ranks as needed, like maybe when we get the new LMS in place and we have lots of people needing help all at the same time. We already have on-call staff available to start to help with that. That will be in place. The university is moving towards Microsoft Office 365, which is so much more accessible. I can't even begin to tell you the difference between Office 2016 that we use now and Office 365. the accessibility measures without you even doing anything but just opening a document and typing is just light years ahead of where we are now. It won't let you create a document without headings. It won't let you create some of the stuff that we do now and we have to fix. The new office will help you with that. And investing in Ally again as a tool so that you can even tell what's wrong with your documents, and then use the Ally tools and little speedometers that we all hate, that you can at least know where you stand, and then you know what to work on. And I know it's frustrating to kind of sit down one day and click on that and get the whole report that looks really daunting because you only got a 6% on the 6% accessibility. But with just a few minutes of work, 5 or 10 minutes of work, you can probably jump from 6% to 85, or maybe even more. And so hopefully those tools the university is investing in will help you to meet those targets. So I know it's a tough subject and it's a hard thing to think about adding one more layer of work, but we're trying to add those tools in that will make it a little less onerous.
Okay, so now we're gonna get to the grit, all right? Into what do you do to make your documents accessible? And I chose just a few areas that we're gonna focus on, okay? Providing alt text so that if they do convert it to HTML, it tells them what the image was that they can no longer see. Or mark it as decorative so that it just won't read anything about the image. You don't want it reading out some long title of a file. Okay. Tables should be used for organizing information, not for design purposes. Now, back in the day, it became very much a trend to use tables for layout purposes, to make this be here and this be here and this here and this here. And those practices need to go away because those are the things that cause a lot of barriers for digital accessibility, okay? And then finally, building navigation into your documents by indicating the style types. So remember I talked about vocabulary, and knowing the vocabulary so that when you leave here, you know what to look up. So whatever, I'm going to try my best to demonstrate in a couple of different applications to give you some, variety there. There's only so much time, and as you leave, you'll know that if you use LibreOffice, because I'm not going to be using that one as an example. If you use LibreOffice, search LibreOffice style, and you'll find out how to build in the style. Okay, so let's move on. We'll start talking about these, and before I do, because I might be talking a little bit fast throughout this part, remember that you can plug your questions into the PollLab. And this is where you find a lot more information. Go to ltt.truman.edu and click on Ally Resources. This is a screenshot from that page. I highly recommend, if you weren't here last year or if you didn't have opportunity to attend an Ally workshop, watch the Ally workshop recordings. It's not several workshops, it's actually one workshop broken down into segments. So, you can watch it in bite-sized pieces, all right? I also recommend a video series that I have down here on digital accessibility in documents, and the reason I recommend that one is because it's 3 videos, each under 4 minutes, and packs a lot of information into them, okay? It guides users through making one simple document digitally accessible, okay? So I highly recommend visiting this page and looking at those. And then, of course, we also have our email address and phone up here, so you can reach out to us with any questions that you have, okay, about how to do these things or anything. Okay, so we're going to start with those 3 topics. We're going to start with alt text. Alternative text is simply a description of the image. Don't go into too much detail, but think about what do you need students to get from this image, okay? If I didn't need them to know what area of the brain this network dealt with, then I would just mark it as decorative, but it was important information, and so the HTML file had that alt text in there explaining what it was, okay? For most of them, So how, in most current applications, I notice they say current because Word 2016, a little more complicated, okay, but Ally could coach you through how to do it there. But for most of them, you can just right-click the image and select alt text. Okay, so for example, let's pull up this particular file, the file that we're watching right now. You know, I can scroll down here to that page and right-click and see, this is an outdated version. So if you don't see alt text, format whatever, okay? So when I click format, then over here, as I said, it is a little bit harder to find, but here's the alt text. Notice that the alt text is written in the description and not in the title. Okay, you can write something in the title if you want, but that doesn't show up as the alt text. That's not the same thing. And here I have another document that I can show you. Actually, I already know that this isn't going to quite bring it up the right way. Here it is. So this is a document in Google Docs. Yes, so I'm sure a lot of you use Google Docs. Let's see what happens. You right click and up, there it is, alt text. Okay, so it's pretty easy to find, and then you just, write in that basic description. What do you want students to get out of it? Okay, I also have over here, no, that one's not an example that I'm going to use for this. Tables. As I mentioned before, tables should be used for organizing information, not for layout and design purposes. I say check to be sure there is a header row, and I'll show how to do that in both Word and PowerPoint. Even the older versions, it's in the same spot. And then you'll have different vocabulary between different applications. Some will call it repeat, and some will call it pin. But just remember those words and to look for how do you repeat the header row or how do you pin the header row, okay? And that's usually under table properties. I'll show it in just a moment, okay? And then check your reading order. I'm going to show you how to do that first because that's also something that you might need to do when you're looking at a presentation sometime. Okay, you check the reading order simply by you click in the first cell of your table and hit the tab button. Does it go to, if this were being read out loud, is it reading it in the right order? Okay, so that's where we check the reading order. And here I'm going to show you this, pull up my Google Doc again. And here's a table. I know that Google Docs, we can use table properties, or look, they even have it in the menu. Pin, remember I said watch for repeat or pin. So what that does is if it goes on to another page, then the headers will be repeated on the new page. Very important for screen readers.
Even if it doesn't repeat on your page, whatever device they may be using, the table actually may flow across multiple screens, even if you haven't designed it that way. So that's why that's important, even if it doesn't appear that that would be an issue.
Alternatively, pin header row will just kind of keep that top row from moving while they read the rest of it. Okay, so either one of those, just watch for those. Okay, and yep, covered that one. Now the last one that I wanted to address is headings, okay? And the word that I want everyone to remember for this is styles. All right, so whatever application you're using when you're trying to build in navigation into your document, then you're going to assign styles. For example, anything that is a main topic, you would call it heading 1. You would identify it as heading 1. Any subtopics under that would be heading 2. If you go into subtopics under the subtopics, they would be heading 3. Okay, that is the most important thing that I want you to get from this, from knowing. And why? Let's take a look, both in Google Drive and OneDrive.
As she's bringing those up, just remember that we might have used that previously to think about organization. And again, visually, you're chunking your topics into like an outline form, kind of.
but you will notice that she's using terms like navigation, because that is, again, in a digital document, people may be using tab to navigate through that document, or a screen reader, or some other alternative format to proceed through the document. And that's why now our idea chunking now becomes a navigation issue.
And so now that is exactly what I'm about to demonstrate right here. So here in Office, so if you're using an Office document, Microsoft Word, you would click on the View tab, and this works on the desktop version as well. It's the View, and then select Navigation. And look at this, we have a whole table, we can go specifically to different areas of the document easily and quickly. So you can see that not only would this help someone, imagine someone needing, relying on assistive technology to get from one section to the next of a very large document. With those, they can use that navigation and get to exactly the part that they want. But likewise, isn't that useful for everyone with super long documents? If you've got some resources that are really long, this is so helpful to everyone. Okay, and then I also have it pulled up in Google Docs. They usually have this over here. And there it is. So it's the same document. I wanted to show it to you in a couple of different applications, but again, I got to view navigation in whatever app you're using. Okay?
So you notice that she's using OneDrive and some newer features we get to test out and have access to some things in our office before you guys do. And know that it is not just a matter of, I guess it's not just sitting around not updating your office suite. There are some server issues, back-end infrastructure issues, compatibility across multiple platforms, including email and various things that go into our ability to update the Office products. And so our target at this point is next summer, that we will be going to Office 365. Hopefully we'll be making some announcements about that, but just be aware that that's our target at this point for when that rolls forward. Yes?
When is the LMS change target?
2 weeks ago. I am not in charge of that announcement, and so I wish I knew. I'm as anxious, probably more so than you are, because I have
It's
to
gonna happen sometime in the middle of the semester?
No, the announcement.
The announcement.
But when,
So not-
when will we?
Oh,
I think is what the
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question, yes. So again, the Blackboard will be up in parallel, so let's say for spring, you could use either one. And then in the summer would be, again, that target's full-time switchover. As my current understanding is.
Okay.
So that is subject to change, but that's what I understand.
I know you're not in charge. I'm not judging you.
I know, I so wish I could
I know.
get information out there.
So it is actually, time for the session to end. I have the questions pulled up here, and I'm going to go over those, but no one will be offended if you need to, wrap up and get to your next class. If you asked a question and I don't get to it, please send it to us. I made sure I have our information up here. So someone asked a good question that I asked myself this morning, and I didn't find the answer yet. And it's, can you change the reading order of a table? I'm sure you can, but I have not found how to do that yet. So, I plan to just do a search for changed reading order in, I do know how to change the reading order in a presentation. If your presentation is making it read this and then this and then this, I do know how to change those. So reach out to me and I can guide you through that process and, make it easy for you. The other question, how did you make the timer go down over time in PowerPoint? I just created that. Took me just a couple of minutes, but I do use PowerPoint a lot. So it took me a couple of minutes to make it using the animations, and I don't mind sharing the timer. In fact, the entire PowerPoint I have as a template that I can share with any professor. Just send an email to LTT and say, hey, can you send that PowerPoint template? And I'll send it to you. It's already branded with Truman colors and everything. So, and I'll make sure I have the timer included in it. I think that was all of the questions that were on here. So